Good evening, everybody. The White House communications team should be moving into the Situation Room, the war room, as the president is under assault 360 degrees. His administration as well under assault from all sides, from obstructionist Democrats to the president's own party, the left-wing national media, the deep state, you name it. It seems the president is targeted. Tonight, unnamed sources, most likely within the highest levels of the FBI, in my opinion, telling the New York Times that former Director James Comey now claims President Trump asked Comey to end what is now a 9-month-long investigation into former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. The Times reports that Comey wrote a memo after meeting with the president in February. A memo that Comey apparently shared with some of his associates, writing that the president told him, quote, "I hope you can let this go." This according to an unnamed Comey associate who read parts of that memo to a Times reporter. The White House tonight denying outright the story, saying, quote, "The president has never asked Mr. Comey or anyone else to end any investigation, including any investigation involving General Flynn." As to General Flynn, former Defense Secretary Robert Gates Sunday told Face the Nation that he thought it was a stretch to suggest, as many Dems have, that Flynn would have made himself vulnerable to Russian blackmail.
Having evidence that they didn't tell the truth to somebody in the same building where they work, maybe it's just the old intel guy, it's a problem. And it's a problem, like I just said, that I would tell the president about. But it's not the same as, and it's hard for me, I don't know General Flynn well, but it's hard for me to believe anybody would allow themselves to be blackmailed by the Russians because they didn't tell the full story or didn't tell the truth to the Vice President of the United States, who works 50 feet down the hall. You know, maybe he could have been blackmailed. It's theoretically possible. I just think it's a different kind of situation than we would have thought of in the intelligence business.
A different kind of situation, but it is now a situation that has been investigated for 9 months by the FBI. The FBI seems at a minimum to take 8 months and seldom reaches a conclusion. The New York Times report just the latest in a series of attacks against this president based on leaks from a deep state in which many are obviously looking to subvert President Trump and his administration. The president earlier fired back over the leaks, tweeting this, quote, "I have been asking Director Comey and others from the beginning of my administration to find the leakers in the intelligence community." Obviously, to this point, so far, without much success. Joining me now for the latest on the deep state's attempts to subvert the presidency, the White House leaks, and much more, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer joining us tonight, Senior Fellow with the London Center for Policy Research. And Tony, good to have you with us.
Thanks, Lou.
Let's start with this, what appears to be a memo to file by the FBI director.
Right.
That conveys a one-person view of what happened in a conversation with at least one other person, the president. What do you make of this?
Well, further than that, Lou, let me read to you the article from MSNBC saying, "Neither NBC News nor The Times has seen the actual memo." Think about that. They're reporting that someone whispered to them about a memo that may or may not exist in somebody's file at the FBI. This is truly deep state, and you have collusion. I mean, this passes for reporting. This is beyond insane. And Lou, what you said here, walking up to it, I think illustrates clearly what the issue is regarding the president. The president did actually ask Mr. Comey to do something. And that thing he asked him to do was do your job, investigate the leaks. And instead of doing that and being asked by Trey Gowdy the same thing, expressing no interest at all in actually doing his job to investigate leaks, which, by the way, did compromise techniques and procedures of how we do collection. It was an arrogance about him that said, basically, I can pick and choose what I want to do. So this is another example of that, where you have people, and by the way, Lou, just between you and me, if you had something to say about someone, I don't think you'd be trying to go through your staff to say it. I think if you felt a certain way, you would tell that person. Why do we believe that James Comey would want this leaked out? I think that this is something being done by those in the deep state to upset everything that's going on, and like you said, try to undermine the president in every breath.
You know, and there is within this, I've been very critical of the White House communications team, and I think fairly and appropriately. I have to say that the White House is sitting there. That communications team has barely raised its head, let alone its voice collectively, to defend the president, to defend. I mean, I don't understand what they're doing for this president right now. Do you?
No, I don't. And this is where I think the criticism is apt by the fact that, first off, yesterday, I don't know what they were doing regarding the messaging regarding H.R. McMaster and that whole thing. And let's be clear on this. The president, for better or for worse, is the ultimate classification or declassification authority. He can talk to anybody about anything, no matter what the level is. And beyond that, I understand that things were instantly twisted by the National Security Council staff and leaked, obviously, to the Post. And there was a very delayed, very muted response, where they should have been right up there outlining the facts right up front about how this is completely false. So I think they, like you point out, the White House communication staff has to believe they are now at a state of war. This is war. It's called information operations, information warfare, and clearly the other side, the deep state and the Clinton folks, and I have to say some folks on the Republican side are all lining up. The battle lines are drawn, and it's time for people to understand how to deal with this as if like it's a war.
Yeah, and that's why I made reference to the war room.
Right.
This president famously called Jeb Bush low energy, and with that branded a person who you know, so effectively. But the fact is, this is a low energy communications department, and it needs to be as, well, hell, the White House needs to be as high energy in its entirety as our president.
Right.
I know
absolutely.
that's a very tough requirement and a high bar, but they've got to pick it up, because when you are looking at this array of people in deep state, on Capitol Hill, on the left, on the rhinos on the right, you name it, the national left-wing media.
Right.
You've got to counter that assault.
Right. And Lou, that's exactly what you have to do. You have to basically line it up, bring it up like it's a battle. And you got to figure out your order of battle. That's the technical term of figuring out who your troops are, figuring out who the bad guys are, and going about it that way. And frankly, you need to weigh into them. To use a term from General Patton, you know, you just got to do it. And this is where I think the president clearly understands what he's trying to do. Right. And I don't always believe that he has staff which is actually kind of rolling at his pace. And again, yesterday I cited for you kind of that whole debacle. And I'm sorry, you know, I don't know General McMaster, but I don't think he did much good the way he presented the counter argument. They've got to be much more precise. They've got to be better than the other side. And they just haven't got to that mark yet.
Yeah, and there's no question that the president has a bright and capable team, but they need to be, let's say, remotivated, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Focused a bit.
Right.
I want to turn just to one other aspect here as we consider it. You know, I look around and I see the great cabinet this president has put together. I look over at the intelligence agencies that are now led by just absolutely superior people. The deep state is committed to maintaining this assault, it seems. I mean, we're not even 4 months into the Trump presidency, and the assaults continue, the attacks continue, and we have, as you indicated at the outset, the New York Times and the Washington Post, these are no longer fake news. I mean, they are, it's an entire psyops. It is a disinformation campaign from previous, you know, former journalists. What do you think, having some experience with all of the above, would be an appropriate response by this White House?
Well, two things. First, you're completely correct on the papers. I mean, this is they become Pravda, just to use a Cold War metaphor, and it's shameful. Secondly, regarding the very fact, and look, I've met with senior intelligence officials now in place, and Lou, they have to go through and sort out who is going to be actual career people who are going to do their job and those who are loyal to the previous administration. And some of these folks have transitioned from what we call political appointee jobs into career jobs. So you got to go through. My recommendation, I'll tell you what I've said, you need to go fire two levels down. Everybody below you 2 levels, fire them. Be done with it. Thank you for your service to America. It's time for you to find a new job. And then start looking for people who are going to be loyal to the American people and to the policies of this president. That's what you've got to do. It's just that simple.
Very quick, if you will, your best one-word answer. Should this president reasonably expect that his intelligence agencies and staff should be able to find leakers in quick order who are, frankly, sharing classified information with the, at the very least, the national left-wing media that are then hammering that into a spear that's thrown against him?
Right. The answer is yes. And let me explain in just a handful of words.
Okay, half a word?
Well, look, you need to fire the people and then do a real investigation. Now that Comey's gone, Lou, he has the ability to appoint someone who can actually do real leak investigations. That's what he should immediately do. And it ain't that hard. You can find these people. If I was in charge, I'd find these people in less than 2 weeks.
Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, you might send a note to the White House, either with your own thoughts or suggesting those of someone else.
Well, thank you, Lou. Well, you too.
You've got it.
Thank you.